Well, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Meet the Author. Today, I have Kennedy Ryan here with me. Kennedy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat.
So excited that you're here. I like to always start these off with a very simple question, just kind of get people in. So I have to ask you, do you consider yourself more of an introvert or an extrovert?
I cheat on this question. I think I'm an ambivert. I'm kind of like a blend. Being around people is very energizing for me until it's not. Like I hit a wall. And I actually have discovered that I really love being alone. Like I love time by myself and I really need it to refresh. And so I love being with people while I'm with people, but then I start to crave just kind of like some time by myself. I like myself, so it's like I like to be alone with my thoughts. I like to watch television by myself. So an ambivert, I guess, would be a good way to describe it.
I like that. I like that a lot. I can see how that probably fits for a lot of people, like you like your social settings. I'm kind of those like I like that too, but then there's also days that I committed to things and then it's like day up and I'm like, why did I commit to this? This could have been a me day type of situation.
Yes, and I definitely need me days. For
That's
sure.
awesome. Well, obviously, you have a lot of books that
Mm.
some people have loved to read in different series, but I have a small stack here. I need to get more and more. I just, buying books on a budget, you got to do it. But I'm like obsessed with your books. But recently, as in like yesterday when this was recorded, September 19th, Blockshot just came out with this new cover. First off, this cover is stunning. I have to ask because I'm like obsessed with them. When you go to create your covers, what is like the thought process? Do you have like an idea in your head, or is it kind of like you get different things? Do you want like specific things in your story that has to be included? How does that process go for you?
I think it's different from cover to cover. And I think it's also different because I'm a hybrid author. So I self publish and I also traditionally publish like Blockshot and Longshot. And next month, Hookshot are all being re released new paperbacks through
Mhm,
Bloom. But a lot of my backlist, the lion's share of my backlist is indie published,
mhm.
and so there's a real collaboration when you are publishing traditionally. Hopefully, there's a collaboration. A lot of authors say, I don't have any say in anything. And I've been very fortunate that I do actually get to speak into the covers, at different points. But when I am indie publishing, I'm pretty obsessive about covers. I have not been above reshooting a cover twice. Like a cover shoot, I've been known to actually have done that on two covers. We completely did a complete photo shoot, looked at all the photos, and I was like, we didn't get it. We got to go back in. And once we did that, and I was like, oh, we got it right the first time. And they're like, Kennedy, But I'm obsessive about covers. You had Before I Let Go there, very, very involved with that cover. It's one of my favorite covers ever. Yes.
Stunning. Truly
Yes.
stunning.
We worked really hard on that cover. I was very involved. I love the new Bloom covers. I think the new Bloom covers, first of all, the flowers have significance, because Iris, I have Longshot here. The character's name is Iris, and the flower is the iris. And with Hookshot, the character's name is Lotus. The flower on the front is Lotus. And I also think that a lot of people will say with the Hoop series, specifically Longshot, that there's a lot of women's fiction, that it's not just romance or sports romance,
Yeah.
because it's very heavy and it really deals a lot, probably like 80-20, with the woman's journey. And I think the new covers feel a little more expansive. They feel like those covers feel like they reach a little beyond even romance and into kind of a women's fiction aesthetic, if there is one. But I think that was very deliberate in trying to kind of broaden the reach of these stories, and of me. And I love so many people who don't read romance are like, I don't read romance, but I read Before I Let Go. I don't read romance, but I read Longshot. I don't read romance, but, and I think the packaging can be a really big part of that. It depends. Yeah, but I'm pretty obsessive about covers.
I love that, like you use Long Shot as an example, but there's still romance in it. So, people
Yes.
have that aspect. But I like, again, like you cover some heavy topics and it's definitely,
Mhm.
even before I let go too, it's like it's emotional. I mean, there's
Yeah.
there's so many things that are covered in here that's so important that people like get to read. But
Yeah.
then, I hate it that like it's like this, but sometimes it's just how it is. Like if it was just, if you took the romance away, so many people probably wouldn't read it, even though there's
Yeah.
so many important things and just stuff like that. But the fact that you have some of that in there, but you still get to touch on so many good topics. So like women can be
Right.
like, oh, I'm gonna read a romance book, but then they can learn so much, maybe see signs in like their own relationship or their own life or things like that that they need to like self-reflect kind of situation.
Right.
I like that
Right.
you do that on purpose. And I think these real
Mhm.
like these new covers, it's not, like overly like, oh, that looks, like too romancy. It's like perfect. I think it really fits the vibe of what, the story
Yeah.
for. And I
I
love
agree. I agree. I'm very pleased. They've done a great job.
how is it for you, especially again, like you said, you are split. So you have like a lot of your backlist, indie author, but then you have some books that are getting republished. How has that been for you as an author that you're like gaining all these new people that are finding you because they're like, oh, I picked this up in a Barnes and Noble and now, I got
Right.
the whole backlist. How has that been fun?
Yeah, it's been really great. I mean, I started traditional, so like my first four books were traditionally published and then I went indie, so it's kind of like, and now I'm going back to traditional, but also indie. I'm kind of all over the place. Both are great experiences. I think that it was very deliberate for me to return to traditional publishing, especially with the book Before I Let Go. It was a book that it had a message that I really wanted to mass distribute. I wanted it to reach as many people as possible. And I wanted people to pick it up in airports and Barnes and Nobles and Targets and Walmarts. And that's what's happened. And I think there's no book that I want that for more even than Long Shot, considering its message
Mhm.
for women and survivors. So it's been really great. I think that I have found like a whole new wave of readers who had never read me before. And like I was saying, so many of them are not romance readers, which is, my books tend to be books that people who love romance and always want their friends to love romance give to their non-romance reading friends. And they're like, no, 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 you really like this one, because they're like, it's more, than just romance.
Trust me.
Trust me, really, it's more than romance, and I think it's just romance. When I say just romance, I think romance is, has so many multitudes. There's so much that comes with our genre. And I think so often people have preconceived notions about what romance is capable of.
Mhm.
And I love it when our books surprise people, our stories surprise people. And that has been really one of the fun things, is finding all these new readers who had never given romance a chance, who see it, in the airport or see it in Target and they're like, oh, what's that? Um, so I'm really loving this journey. I am also Bloom acquired 5 of my books and they're releasing all 5 of them this year. So
That's
we've already they've re-released the Kingmaker, the Rebel King, Long Shot, Block Shot, and then the last one will re-release is Hook Shot in October. But my publisher for Before I Let Go is also releasing 4 of my debut novel series books before the end of the year, or 3 of them. I'm just like, it is, and some, these are older stories. Long Shot was written in 2018. Kingmaker was written in like 2019. So it's like, and the ones that my other publisher for Before I Let Go is releasing, those books were written 10 years ago.
yeah.
So it's been interesting too, revisiting those stories and editing. Like, oh my gosh, is that a fax machine? It's like, what? Is that a BlackBerry? It's just like, when you're revisiting those older stories, it's just crazy to see. I mean, one of them was talking about Skype, and I'm like, when was the last time I thought about Skype? Everybody's on Zoom now,
Yeah.
so it's like, when I go back to revisit those stories that are like 10 years old, it's just so funny to see how so many things have changed. And it's fascinating, and I'm really, really loving reintroducing these stories to new readers.
Is it fun for you to, like you said, going back to some of these again, you wrote like 10 years ago to going to see like how much you've even changed and grown as an author that you go back and you're just like, I'm
Oh,
proud of myself, like where I've come, is like that been an
yes. I
experience?
mean, I think the Bennett series is my debut series, and that's the one that Forever Romance is re-releasing. And it's 4 books, and the first 3 are written in third person. And I write in first person, which most indie authors write in third person. Most of romance now has shifted to third person, except for
Mhm,
like historical romance and a few others. But 10 years ago, most writers were romance writers were writing third person. And
mhm.
it's so funny to read myself writing third person point of view, and I'm just like, wow. I mean, not that it's not good,
Uh-huh.
it's still there, like it's the essence of who I am is still there, but as a writer, but it's just in third person. And I love writing in first because it's just much more immediate and much closer
Mhm,
to the bone. And I also see an evolution in myself of why I write, my finding my voice. I talk about voice sometimes when writers ask me about voice and what's important. I think it's very important to find your voice. And for
mhm,
me, voice is not just what I say or how I say it, but it's why I say it.
mhm.
And I've seen a shift in the why I write determines what I write and what I'm interested in writing. So a book like Long Shot probably wouldn't have happened 10 years ago. A book
Yeah,
like The Kingmaker that, focuses on an indigenous heroine and land rights and climate science and all of the things that are really important to me. Those are the things in real life
yeah.
make their way, a survivor's journey, make their way into my stories in a way that I think in the beginning of my career they didn't. I was writing because I knew I wanted to be a romance writer, but
Mhm,
I didn't really understand what I wanted my space to be, what I wanted my claim to be in the
mhm.
genre, and now I do, and it completely changes it has changed what I write.
And the impacts that you can have, knowing that you're going and you're writing these stories that maybe, again, like Long Shot, people maybe not have the courage to, speak up, and then they
Yeah,
read your story and they feel that connection and things like that, that it's really
absolutely.
helps and it's beneficial for things like that, which I think, again, is fantastic that you're doing that. I think a lot of times romance can find itself kind of not copy and paste, but that's how people view it. It's
Right.
like, you're reading the same book again and again and again, just slightly twisted.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, sometimes you are, and if you love
And
it,
it's fine.
you love it. Like that's give
Yes.
me more of it. But it's nice
Yes.
too when you have something that again, like people can connect to. And even then, some books, it's like it may not be someone's favorite, but for someone, that's exactly what they needed to read that
Right.
day in that stage of their life. And so I love that you are doing that, and that's like how you're using your platform now is like
Yeah.
you're writing with intention, like you said, what you want to write, what you want to be known for, and I think that's
Yeah.
fantastic. Kind of
Yeah.
going off of that, how do you, when you're like starting off, okay, I want to write this book, what is the process like for you? That do you have an idea? Do you start, charting it down? What is it like? Okay, this is what the story I want to tell, now. What is that process like for you starting up a new book?
Chaos. No. Not chaos, but people will often ask, are you a plotter? Are you a pantser? And I'm neither of those things, truly. A lot of people, anyone who's heard me interview and anyone who's ever heard me answer this question knows that my journalism background comes
Mhm.
into play when I'm writing romance, because I approach these stories the same way I would if I was writing an article. I do lots of research and I do lots of interviews. And usually when I'm starting a book, I'm not someone who is like, oh my gosh, I have an idea for a book. Like that's not how it happens for me. And this circles back to kind of when I talked about writing with so much intention. Usually there's something I've seen in the world that enraged me or inspired me, and then I'm like, what story would center that thing, what
Mhm.
story would give me a space to tell a great love story but also amplify this thing that's really important to me. So usually it starts with me with what I call creative conviction,
Mhm.
meaning something that's really important to me that I believe through art I can amplify and I can start a good discourse, a discourse in our community, in our space. So that's really where story starts for me. And then I'm like, okay, who is it? You know, and often, and I'll have like a general idea, but it's not until I start interviewing,
Mhm.
usually people who have actually lived those experiences that the characters do, that the story really starts to take form. And so I'm not someone who at the beginning of the process has an outline, but I'm also not someone who just sits down and flies by the seat of my pants like a pantser.
Mhm.
I kind of go out and find the story through research, through interviews, through supplemental reading, and then I'm like, okay, at a certain point, I'm like, I know enough now to tell this story,
Mhm.
and that's when I really start crystallizing the plot a little bit more. Not that I have no plot in the beginning, but it's certainly not solidified until after I've talked to a lot of people and read and really immersed myself. My writing style is very immersive,
Mhm.
meaning I completely lose myself in that world. For example, I wrote a book called Real. The research for that book was just unreal, you know, because the character has lupus. And so I was reading so much on lupus, talking to doctors, but also the heroine is starts with Broadway and is an actress. I literally had a sensitivity reader who was a Broadway actress, you know, and I interviewed her. And then the hero was a director. And I really wanted to be fluent in what he was doing. So I took the oh gosh, why can't I think of the name of the master classes? I took master classes for probably 3 weeks with like Martin Scorsese and Issa Rae and cinematographers, and just like 3 weeks of doing master classes with directors and cinematographers and producers. I interviewed directors and it was like, and
Mhm.
then it had a Harlem Renaissance element. I had like maps of the Harlem in 1920s, and I had a stack of books on feminism and blues singers, and like when I say immersive, it is like deep. It's like you have to kind of claw your way back out to actually write the story, and it's really my favorite part of the process is the research.
I love that. I have two questions off of that just because again, I just love that. But one of the first ones being, you said you get really into this. It's more of like a statement, I guess. I love that you do so much of that research because
Mhm.
I feel like not very often, but sometimes people, the saying you like write what you know, but there's sometimes people want to read things that they don't necessarily know. And
Yeah.
so they want to know more. And so I love that you like are fully into this. So if someone's like, well, you don't know what you're talking about, you're like, here are the receipts actually. I went to class for 3 weeks and I interviewed X. I mean, you have all of this stuff, and I absolutely love that. Like when you go into a book, you're like, I know what I'm talking about. I know the people that I'm talking like
Yeah.
speaking for, and I absolutely love that. Going back to the journalism thing,
Yeah.
because I have, connections with that too. And I would just love, I like to do these meet the author just to talk about your books, but also as you as a person. Talk to us a little bit about, that journalism background and like how that, I guess, again, helps and shapes and things. And, when you decided maybe not to do journalism and more writing stories now and, being
Right.
and that like change for you.
Right. So I've been writing. People always say I've been writing all my life. I really have. I was 17 years old when I started writing for our city newspaper. I was a senior in high school and I started writing editorials for our city newspaper. And I'm sure I was too young. Like they probably didn't even know. So that was like my first taste of, oh, like I could do this professionally. And then when I got to college, of course, I was in a journalism program. My degree is actually focused on public relations. And
Okay.
so lots of technical writing. But I started freelancing as soon as I was out of college. I was working for nonprofits, philanthropic organizations, churches, all of these organizations, charitable organizations, doing a lot of PR work and writing for them. And then I started also freelancing a
Mhm.
lot, writing articles. But when my son was diagnosed with autism, a lot of my writing really started leaning into autism advocacy and parenting. So, I was writing for parenting magazines, mom magazines, Chicken Soup for the Soul, writing, kind of leveraging my skill as a writer to advocate for my son, and for our community, and to make sure that people knew our stories.
Mhm.
And so I did that for a long time. I also founded and ran an organization for families who have kids with autism. I ran that for maybe 13 years.
That's awesome.
So when I say, autism, like I was in that world and
Mhm.
writing, and, that's what I did. And it came to a point where I was like, okay, so I'm a special needs mom. I'm now running an autism organization. I'm writing autism. Everything is, in the context of that specific
Mhm.
element. And I needed something that was just for myself. And I remembered how much I loved romance because I was a voracious romance reader growing up.
Mhm.
Probably much too early. I started like in the 8th grade. I mean, like hardcore romance, bodice rippers. You're talking about like Woodowitz and Joanna Lindsay, and the good stuff. But when I got to college, a lot of times when you get to college, now it's time to read the serious books, like the real books. And I put romance down for a long time. And when I needed an escape, I went back to reading romance.
Mhm.
And as I was reading it, and it was just giving me so much life and so much hope and so much of a much needed escape, I was
Mhm.
like, well, I am a writer, and I just stories started forming for me. That I could write. And actually, people kind of are blown away by this. Before I Let Go, which published last year,
Mhm.
is the first book I ever wrote. Like 15 years ago, I wrote Before I Let Go, but it wasn't called Before I Let Go. It had different character names. Like there was so much
Mhm.
that was written in third person. Like it was a completely different thing that I had to reconstruct. But that's the first book I wrote, even before my first novel that published. And my husband was the one who was like, what about that divorce story, like 2 years ago, 3 years ago,
Mhm.
and really encouraged me to go back and revisit it. So,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
it is. I mean, I always have to give him credit, for Before I Let Go, because I would never have gone back to it. Only two people had read that story, him and my sister, in the whole world. I never planned to publish it. He's like, what about that? So I think,
So
yeah,
we have
that's
him to thank for that now. We
we
can.
have him to thank for that. Yeah. But so I think that's kind of how it formed, for me. Um Returning to romance as a reader, and then really looking for, I think I really want to do this. And like I said, when I first started, I was just like, I'm gonna write romance, and then at a certain point, maybe like 2.5 years in or so, I really started honing in
Mhm.
on, what do I really want to say, what do I want to talk about. And I think that's a shift in my backlist.
That's awesome. I love that. And I think it's so important too, especially, for I've interviewed quite a few people, obviously, and just especially for moms that you have to have something for yourself. And there's
Right.
so many moms that are authors and they were just like, I found, my identity was just being so and so's mom. And
Absolutely.
to have something for yourself and you have to have this. And so I love that you channeled that into writing these books that now I'm sure there's other moms again that are connecting to these characters and how they're feeling and just like that aspect of it. I think that's incredible that you took something, and shaped it to being positive in your
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
When you're writing books, you kind of talked about the process and like how it starts, the conviction. But when you're actually writing a book, do you sit down and like you just have to be by yourself in a space, like at home? Where do you feel like you are getting the most out of your writing? Like by yourself somewhere? Can you write in a coffee shop? Kind of how is that for you?
It depends on what stage of the book I'm in. Like, I don't write well when my husband and son are home and awake, you know, because there's a constant like pull for your attention, and for like if my son's in school, but now he's not in school anymore. He just graduated from high school, which is great. But I need to be super, super focused, but
Mhm.
I can be in a restaurant surrounded by people, music and television can be on, and I am like completely just like zoned in. But if I'm at my house and I hear my son make a noise, or I hear my husband, watching ESPN, I don't know why, but it completely takes me out, because it's like being home. So I write at home best late at night, like
Mhm.
when they're asleep and there's no demand. But what I've been doing a lot, is I go to hotels. You know, I go away or Airbnbs. I will
Mm-hmm.
go away for 2, 3, 4 days at a time. And I'm really, really fortunate that my husband is such a great partner and holds everything down, you know, at home so that I can do that. And I will usually do that a few times during a book, especially at the end. At the
Mm-hmm.
end, it's usually like a marathon, and I just go to a hotel and I lock in and I write. And the thing is, I will get as much written in 2 days as I got written in a week and a half. You know, easily. I have been known to write 30,000 words in 4 days, and it took me 3 weeks to write 40,000 words, 30,000 words, you know? But in the hotel, I don't, I barely shower. I barely leave the room. You know, it's just,
You got to come out of
it's,
the fog. Remember to eat.
yeah, yeah. And I'm like, okay, let's get her done, you know?
That's awesome. I love that. Especially, it's fun always asking different authors, where they feel like it's best. Some people are like, absolutely, I can never write in public. And there's some people that are like, I hate being at home. I have to go somewhere else.
My
So
favorite place to write is my bed, you know, but unfortunately it is at home. So if I'm here by myself, I will go crawl in my bed. Or if, you know, they're occupied, I will lock the door, crawl in my bed and write, you know, because there's something about, and a lot of people are like, I have to be at a desk. I love writing in bed. I don't know why, but I do. Of
that's awesome. I have a few, more small questions. This one,
course.
it's not, it may be challenging, but I like to ask authors, but it seems like an unfair question, and maybe it is, but I feel like you have a favorite book. I know it's asking, you like picking children sometimes, but do you feel like one that maybe just like that was the easiest to get out, or like that one means the most to me, or like that one, is what set me apart? Anything that like really sticks out to you with one of your books?
You know, I think that one of the most pivotal books, and I won't say favorite again, because you know, it's when I don't think about them in terms of that because they're so different. But I
Mm-hmm.
think Long Shot is definitely probably the one of the most pivotal books of my career.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it won awards and got a lot of recognition, and it kind of introduced me to a lot of people who had never heard of me, because of, you know, some things that happened for this book, like it making history by winning certain awards.
Mm-hmm.
um, and then even beyond that recognition, also it is a book that it felt like such a touchdown between intention, like why I wrote this book and what I hoped it would accomplish, and seeing the impact. Like there's a direct connect. Like I have Long Shot, of course, is the book that is a survivor story. Women who message me and say, you know, I left my abusive relationship after read Long Shot. I'm now working in a women's shelter after I read Long Shot. I hadn't talked to my mom in, you know, years, because I grew up in an abusive household and never understood why she stayed, or never understood her.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I called her after I read Long Shot. Like there's such a direct line of intention with this book where I see impact. Also, Before I Let Go is that way because mental health with that book was such an intention for me,
Mm-hmm.
especially mental health in marginalized communities. And the messages that I get where people are like, I read Long Shot and I called my insurance company to make sure that they'll cover therapy. I've been avoiding therapy and now I'm going, or, you know, I'm giving this book to my husband because he hasn't wanted to go to therapy. Like there's so much direct intention, but
Mm-hmm.
connection between intent and impact. I think with those two books more than anything I've written. The Kingmaker would be there too, you know, just because of my intentions and really a deep love for the Indigenous community and a real partnership with Indigenous women, you know, who's offered so much of their time in interviews and sensitivity reading and really helped me get those traditions right. So those are and I've already talked about Real. You know,
Yeah.
Real is a very special, and I'm doing it. Like I'm going through all of the books. I know you asked for one, I'm going through all of them.
I love
But
it though.
yeah, Real is very special to me because I am an audio girly. Like 98% of how I consume books is through audio.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my favorite thing is audiobooks. And Real won the Audie last year, and it was the first romance novel in the category written by a Black author to win ever, which long overdue. But then what was really exciting for me too is that it was the first Black narrators to ever win in that category. Long overdue. But those kind of things where you like make history, where you do something that no one's ever done before, where you kind of like bust through a ceiling or you kick down a door. I love doing that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Not just for me, but to show people who look like me, we can do these things. We deserve to be in these spaces. Our stories are as worthy as anyone else's, you know. So that was really, really big for me when Real won the Audi, when
Mhm.
Longshot won the RITA Award. Like those things are big to me because I want people to know we're here. Our stories are great. And, you know, when we get recognition, we'll make room for, you know, other people behind us.
Mhm.
So that's a long answer, but
I love that though too, and especially like you said, being able to be the first one. Not only does that mean a lot to you personally, but
Mhm.
there's someone sitting at home, that or seeing that you do that, and they're like, that gives them the courage that
Yes.
maybe they're on the fence about giving up on this, or they don't think that they can do this, or they see
Right.
everyone else keeps winning, and they're like, why not me? Why not this? Why hasn't it happened? And then
Mhm.
seeing you be able to do that, it's like, okay, I can do this. It just rejuvenates and inspires people. So I love
Yeah,
that.
I
That's
hope so.
it's obviously, as so important too. So it's a
Mhm.
little bit of an unfair question. I just love, asking, because I get answers like that where you have so many reasons to love so many different books and why they're important to you. And I think that's incredible, that books are like, maybe I don't have a kid, so maybe this is overstating, but I feel like sometimes, books are like your kids. You spend a lot
Yeah.
of time, you do all the research, like you said, immersive research, you're taking classes, you're leaving your family, your husband, your child to
Yes.
write these books. I mean, they take a lot of time and effort, and you obviously
They
want them
do.
to resonate well with readers and stuff like that. So it's so important to see, when they do, and the impacts that it has, it's positive. And I absolutely love that. As we're kind of wrapping up here today, for people who maybe haven't read any of your books yet, or like haven't read one of these ones that we're talking about, and they're like, oh my gosh, I need to read that. Where is it best for people to find you?
To find me, I have like any platform I'm on. Instagram, you could just search Kennedy Ryan, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it, you know. And on all of those platforms, I have my bio and it links to everything. You know, it'll take you to my books, to, you know, my Amazon page. Everything is linked into that bio. So that's where it'll take you wherever you need to go.
That's awesome. I love that. Do you have anything else that you want to say today, maybe to readers or people just in general?
No, just I mean, like you said, Blockshot came out yesterday, and I hope that people will give that book a chance. And it is book 2 in the Hoop series. Book 1, of course, is Longshot. And if you want to start with Longshot, that's great. I just want to emphasize the content warnings on that book. It's not one I like for people to stumble into blindly. But anytime, like if Blockshot releases, people are like, "Oh, I need to circle back and read the first one." And so I just always try to mention that Longshot is a very, very heavy book. Blockshot is like the spicy breather. You know, it's like the spicy middle palate cleanser of a book. And then Hookshot will be coming out in October. And it's kind of a blend of the two. It's spicy, it's heavy, it's all those things. So I hope people will give it a chance.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much again for coming on today. It was so great talking with you. Again, I think you're doing so many incredible things. You're breaking barriers, you're making history, you're speaking for people who maybe feel like their voice isn't heard. And I love that you're, doing that and making a difference to not only women who read, but just, people who feel like, again, I can't be heard, and now someone's speaking for
Mhm.
me. And I just love that you're doing that. So thank you so much for,
Thank
being you,
you.
writing your books, but also making the time to do this today. It was so much fun.
No, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
And you guys make sure that you're staying subscribed to everything happening here at Michaela's Book Nook. You can stay here on my YouTube and have all types of author interviews, book reviews, and more. And until next time, thanks, guys.